Weazel News.
Now, this Weazel News terror alert brought to you by BabiesOvernight.com. Chaos at the bridges, citing a suddenly increased terror threat but giving no further details. As a precautionary measure, police have shut down most of the major bridges in the Liberty City metropolitan area, resulting in major traffic problems and some stranded motorists scuffling with police. Mike Whiteley on the scene.
Some local bleeding hearts are whining about freedoms and police brutality. One resident said after his scuffle with police, he's a changed man.
Hey, have you ever had a nightstick up your ass? Well, I have, and it gives you a real clear mission on how to treat people in the future.
By the Broker Bridge in the fish market, I'm Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
Firearms news brought to you by Patriot Beer. Mayor Ochoa is launching a crackdown on the sale of illegal firearms. Maintaining a ban on the sale and possession of weapons in the city, he's also going after shops in other states that are providing illegal gun dealers with merchandise. Residents in South Bohan spoke out.
Someone has to stop these inbred rednecks from flooding our city with illegal weapons. You hear me, rednecks?
Allison Mayberry, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Congress has renewed and extended the Jingoism Act at the request of the president, saying that we must fight terrorism at home. Citizens responded to the news.
They're only taking away freedoms you don't use anyway. What, you want the terrorists to win?
Hey, what do I care? I'm not doing anything wrong. I mean, apart from the occasional joint or fiddling with my tax return or helping my sister move that merchandise she found. Oh yeah, and banging hookers.
Also in patriotism news brought to you by the hit TV show 72, counterterrorism officials are setting up a new task force to deal with the rising Eastern European crime wave in Liberty City.
In other terror news, a scare in Midtown as a warning horn sent tourists running in panic as a green smoke was emitted. Officials indicated the horn is a new deodorant only meant to terrorize the ladies.
I'd like to spray some in your face.
I wish you would. The body of ship captain Zorba Philippidis was found floating in the Humboldt yesterday. An autopsy has revealed dangerous amounts of alcohol in his system.
At first, I thought it was a whale, like that one that got beached on Happiness Island last summer. I brought my kids over to take a look, then I saw it was a body. God, I'm so stupid. I can't believe they let me breed.
Captain Philippidis was in charge of the Platypus, a vessel that recently docked at East Hook Bay. The rest of the crew are currently unaccounted for. Authorities are making inquiries. More people fall unconscious to Weazel News than any other news source.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Now, this breaking news brought to you by Wigwam Burger. Residents of Liberty City may soon lose a favorite home pastime. It's not felching, it's poker.
It's the subject of a #1 TV show and the hit game in Las Venturas and casinos everywhere. But Congress is meddling in our fun time again and planning to outlaw online poker.
They outlaw online poker. Next thing you know, they'll outlaw sleeping with underage girls.
I blame the blacks and the Jews.
Residents are clearly confused as to what the topic at hand is, but nevertheless, they're overflowing with ignorance. In Algonquin, Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
Meanwhile, in South Bohan, one resident is doing everything he can to make a difference. Manny Escuela was speaking to our reporter.
Yo, what's up? I just want to say, communities got to take pride in what they do, man. And that's what my project and the movie being made about my project is all about. It's like hip-hop back when we invented that shit, before it went all commercial and shit, when it was a couple of street cats and a block party and stuff, you know? That's what we doing now, taking the community over for the community and stuff, and filming me while I make a difference, man, you know? It's real. It's gonna be right, tight, man, respect.
Good luck to him. In entertainment news, it's back to the early part of the decade for one formerly famous Liberty City shock jock. Laszlo, who used to host long-defunct radio station Chatterbox, is trying to relaunch himself over the Liberty City airways with a new show. He's still trying to raise funding for the venture. He spoke to reporter Eric House.
Eric, it's Radio 2.0. You could even say it's Radio 3.14. I mean, kind of like how I stretch on to infinity, like pi. I mean, the internet had Web 2.0, so now the radio's gonna have Laszlo 2.0.
What does that mean?
Look, I'm not being vague. It just sounded good.
In Broker, I'm Eric House, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
In a city plagued by corruption scandals, one man has consistently stood up against big business and government. The lawyer Tom Goldberg spoke out yesterday.
This city is drowning in filth. Mayor Julio Ochoa and the police department, they think they could just keep giving us longer and longer snorkels so we'll be able to breathe. The only answer is for them to get their hands dirty and to start shoveling this shit.
Goldberg has settled class action lawsuits with companies including Beta Pharmaceuticals and the Sprunk Soda Group. This is a man the city should be listening to.
Alongside continuous problems with union officials, a new series of complaints has been launched against Dubai property developer Youssef Amir's apartment complex in Castle Garden City.
I paid millions of dollars for this view. What right has this guy got to come along and build a more expensive apartment in front of mine?
Features of the new apartment complex include solid gold fittings, fashionable see-through toilets, and a 24-hour in-house plastic surgeon, so residents can be sure they'll never wake up next to an ugly mistake. Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Liberty City Police are fighting back against charges of police brutality. Police Lieutenant Chuck Montress made a statement today.
Police do not single out minorities for harassment. It just works out that way. Hey, you got a fucking problem?
More on that story at weaselnews.com. Hybrid cars, foolish or flaming?
Some sections of Liberty City say the alternative lifestyle of hybrid lovers isn't welcome.
If anyone in my neighborhood gets a hybrid car, I'll burn their house down. Global warming's a hoax, just like World War II.
In Albany, Eric House, Weazel News.
It's that time again. Time for traffic and mass transit, sponsored by Chihuahua Hot Dogs, who say try beating our meat instead when stuck in traffic. Here's Mike Whiteley.
Got some real jam-ups out there. Broker and Dukes are just a mess, as some people who shouldn't be able to afford a car are screwing it up for everyone.
Speaking of transportation, city officials and the transport union brought long-standing industrial action to a formal close as they ratified the new taxi fare agreement that saw the cost of taking a taxi soar last month.
Excessive and repeated masturbation without release. Some local citizens are raving about meth. Weazel News spoke to this woman.
Do you mind? I'm trying to give head here. All that shit they say about meth is bullshit. Meth is great. I could turn tricks for 48 hours straight.
Incredible. What will they think of next? Jenny Acorn, under the Algonquin Bridge. Stay alert, people.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Weazel News, where the fatal car accident of the day is sponsored by the Liberty City Salamanders women's basketball team, begging you to actually watch a game.
Prominent Deputy Police Commissioner Francis McCreary is considering pushing for promotion to the job with Liberty City's finest when his boss Mitt Fitzsimmons retires next month. McCreary has had a glittering career in the police department since growing up in a tough Dukes neighborhood. He's currently engaged in community projects in Bohan and the constant fight against organized crime. He attributes the recent rise in violent crime to illegal immigration.
They call Liberty City the city that never sleeps, probably because soulless advertising agency workers, lawyers, and hedge fund managers are tweaking their faces off on crystal meth to endure 70-hour work weeks. One activist is giving away free hydroponic weed samples and says meth is awful.
If that shit moves into your neighborhoods, it really affects the kids. Good kids trying to make an honest living, running counterfeit clothes or selling pirate DVDs. Now, all they want to do is tweak on that shit.
One love, I'm Jenny Acorn with a fatty. Weazel News.
Controversial Deputy Mayor Bryce Dawkins has been causing offense again and standing up for family values in a speech yesterday that has outraged liberals and gay rights groups. Mr. Dawkins, who has long condemned what he terms the culture of vice that grips our city like an addiction, attacked gay and lesbian groups as undermining the family values that make this nation great. He went on to blame them for encouraging terrorists and having too many annoying parades. I'm Brian Wilkinson, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
A slur has the city outraged. The controversy Deputy Mayor Dawkins caused with his homophobic rant recently is refusing to die down, as civil rights groups are demanding his resignation or impeachment. Mr. Dawkins tried to link Liberty City's gay community to terrorism. Dawkins himself has now said his comments were misconstrued and misquoted, and in a statement commented, "I like gay people. Some of my best friends are gay. I just don't want to know about it. Can't we all get back to the important matter of fighting terrorism by any means possible?" The controversy continues. continues.
After heavy lobbying, the Action Group border agents love land security, helped push through a new border security bill that gives agents greater powers to catch, detain, and execute illegal immigrants. Wealthy legislators expressed alarm at the plan, saying the best way to stop illegal immigration is to pay all Americans $3 an hour, abolish the minimum wage, and health care benefits.
A new report by a neoconservative think tank says that Europe is still underperforming. Riddled with binge drinkers who cripple their economy with 4 to 6 weeks of vacation a year, the continent has become so bogged down in social services that the American dollar is hardly worth anything across the European Union. Experts say if the continent plans on competing globally, they will need to begin slashing social services and taxes. I'm Jim Harrison, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Violent crime is heavily on the rise in Liberty City, but unsurprisingly, police say the blame lies elsewhere.
The police department is pointing to a recent influx of Eastern European undesirables and a rising gang culture in Liberty City to explain the rising crime. Eastern Europeans disagree.
I'm tired of stereotype, like vodka, toilet paper, like fur coat, and violent tendency make me want to smash in news reporter face.
On Colony Island, I'm Jenny Acorn, Weazel News.
In a city riddled with transit trouble, hybrid cars continue to gain in popularity, but some people think they're a rip.
Liberals are copulating like rabbits in the backs of their hybrids, the car of choice for cruising and picking up the twirly jam band hippie slut of today. Like this dingy liberal who saw the hybrid I borrowed for the story as I drove on the streets of Hatton Gardens.
Hybrid? God, I want to fuck you.
Wow! In Hatton Gardens, I'm Eric House, Weazel News.
Tell me more about composting.
Some residents don't agree that leaders are protecting them by shutting the bridges and tunnels.
We pay a lot for those bridges. They're part of what makes Liberty City unique. The fact that under any of those bridges, you can get head for $10.
Obviously, a man who cares more about getting his rocks off than the future of humanity and making us feel safe. Outside the Algonquin Bridge, Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Will the markets crash? The Nasdaq has taken a serious pummeling today, with the index down below an important number for the first time since a while ago. Although this seems very dramatic, the fact is it doesn't mean much. Hedge funders, traders, and financial services people were looking anxious until they realized they claim fees whether stocks go up or down.
In a near unanimous vote, Congress passed the Jingoism Act today without much debate.
Besides outlawing encryption and privacy, the act makes it mandatory for all residents to speak well of our government. Residents were pleased with the act finally passing.
Those terrorists is crazy, dawg. They don't even go to strip clubs. No wonder they so mad. You gotta have some titties in your face occasionally.
Outside one of just 8 million bean machines, Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
Campaign season is here and will stretch on indefinitely as both Michael Graves and John Hunter flood the airways with campaign commercials, and both are reminded that Weazel News is the most respected news source in the nation with great advertising rates.
Just when you thought there were enough gangsters in town and police were finally getting a handle on organized crime, another family is making for a play in the big leagues. The so-called Alderney mob is gaining prominence on the other side of the West River. Who knows? Soon they might be strong-arming businesses in Algonquin along with the 5 big mafia families in Liberty City. The Ancelottis, the Pavanos, the Gambettis, the Lupicellas, and the Messinas. I'm Jim Harrison, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
No city in America has felt the painful effects of the war on terror like Liberty City.
I'm scared to go out in the street. I'm scared to go on the subway. You never know where they're gonna strike next. Sometimes I even get scared on the toilet. Weazel News always has those sounds that scare the shit out of me. There's one again. Don't do that.
Government intelligence sources who happen to own stock in defense contracting companies believe that 9 in 10 terrorists find Liberty City the most desirable target in the country. Watch out, people. Outside a methadone clinic in Port Tudor, Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
In Armageddon news, Liberty City is as hot as balls at the equator, but some residents just aren't buying that it's global warming.
These scientists are a bunch of show-offs and liars. What the fuck do they know? Oh, look, I have a white lab coat. I went to science class. It was bullshit. I was bored. These scientists should try working for a living. I wish I could get paid to sit in a lab and make shit up.
Meanwhile, a corpse has been found by the river in North Algonquin, and like a couple of other recent murder victims, the corpse has been beheaded and desecrated, prompting some cops to think the unthinkable. We may have a serial killer on the loose in Liberty City for the first time in years. Although detectives appealed for calm and said nothing is clear yet, they are requesting joggers and late-night walkers to be especially careful. We will stay with the story and try to get people really hysterical. This is Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Are you a sex offender? That's the question many police are asking residents. And they've even set up a website, LittleLaceySurprisePageant.com, to catch them. It's a town on edge as people wonder if their father, best friend, or even spouse is a sex offender.
The problem is you, the news media. So what if a man pleasures himself in public? Sometimes you have to take care of business. Comprende? Come on, you want to see my junk?
In Algonquin, I'm Eric House, Weazel News.
Eric House there with a worrying report. When you think of biker gangs, do you think of lovable rogues on the open road stopping at a sleazy motel to cook up a batch? Or do you think of patriots in leather with beards and beers having a good time? Both images are out of date. Outlaw motorbike gangs such as the Angels of Death and the Lost are engaged in a war on the streets of Liberty City. A war with many casualties. Not just the bikers that kill each other, but the lives ruined by the crystal meth and crack cocaine that these thugs traffic. Whoever comes out on top in this war, it won't be Liberty City.
Online dating has overtaken being set up by friends or spiking her drink as the favored way for Liberty City's men to meet loose women. Sites such as LoveMeet.net and Craplist.net have helped Liberty City's many lonely hearts find soulmates, or at least a desperate slob to sleep with for the afternoon.
In radio entertainment news, that annoying shock jock Laszlo is returning to the airwaves after a 6-year absence in which he was tossed by community leaders. He announced that the station will be called Integrity and will be all about integrity. Laszlo lost his radio job after the payola scandal, and quite frankly, because he had a potty mouth. Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Will the bridges open? Consumer groups are putting increased pressure on Mayor Ochoa to reopen at least some of the bridges in the area.
This poor Alderney woman says the bridge closings are really affecting her family.
I'm having an affair with my boss, and those stupid bridge closings are keeping us apart.
A true human tragedy. The mayor's office says we must protect against terrorism, and this is not an overreaction, although they may look to limited bridge openings soon. Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
Another decapitated and mutilated body turned up last night, this time of a 32-year-old jogger in Alderney. Police confirm we have a serial killer on the loose in the city. He still doesn't have a nickname, although police and the news media are working together to try a few out for size. The Keep Fit killer and the headhunter currently top the bill. We will keep you posted on this nightmare in our city.
Can you find love online? As was reported recently, online dating has overtaken more traditional social interactions as the #1 way to meet a mate in the country today. But police yesterday urged caution after a number of disturbing incidents linked to online matchmaking came to light. Along with the usual stalkers, fake photographs, and murders, sociologists warn of a new danger: disillusion-induced depression, when people realize that other people lie on their profiles too, and that not everybody online is a CEO with a powerboat and model good looks. As always, check in with WeaselNews.com for updates.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
An explosion in Bohan has citizens scared and our ratings up. Eric House is on the scene.
Reporters are arriving on the scene of an explosion at a garage in South Bohan on the corner of Guantanamo and Windmill.
I just heard this big boom, and then I saw these flames everywhere and smoke and stuff. It's gotta be terrorists. I said they was coming.
A foreign-looking man was seen leaving the site only moments before the explosion. He is wanted for questioning. News warns to expect more attacks. In South Bohan, I'm Eric House, Weazel News.
The Panoramic Electronics Company has announced a new fridge that tracks your eating and nutritional habits. Tim Leffany with Panoramic.
I go to the fridge and take out hot dogs, burrito, cheese, barbecue sauce, leftover Cluckin' Bell, and ice cream. The fridge will know I'm stoned to my tits and will email me a list of what I ate so I can remember the next morning.
Also in technology news, the phone market is being saturated with cheap phones, but this doesn't mean a drop in quality.
That's right. Now, a quality phone doesn't mean you're some hotshot six-figure earner. Everyone has the right to quality features, cameras, stupid ringtones, and glorious color screen. That's providing they're willing to sign up for a 3-year non-flexible contract with Badger Wireless.
This has been a paid news endorsement from Badger Wireless. This is Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Wherever there are young men, testosterone, and cars, there's always going to be some desperado trying to prove their masculinity in an illegal street race. Despite the current mayor's crackdown on speeding in the city, illegal street racers have been taking to the roads in large numbers recently. Racers told us about big engines, flashy rides, awestruck sluts, and redlining to the max. Women have always been drawn to angry homicidal men. The mayor's office is weighing their options.
Adam and Steve are at it again. The same-sex marriage battle rages on Capitol Hill. Senator Lance Smith has this to say.
Marriage is sacred. A bond between me, my wife, and my secretary. My first marriage was sacred too, but not as much as I thought at the time.
Legislation outlawing metrosexuality is expected as well. Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
In hate crime news, police are worried that a series of violent beatings in Middle Park recently may be the work of one maniac who doesn't want to be part of a free society and hasn't yet gotten a job in government. Weazel will stay on this story and try not to make too many inappropriate jokes, but what do you expect? We're into propaganda, not journalism.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
This is Weazel News, brought to you by the #1 site for viral videos, electritit.com, who invites you to come see Jovan Krassenberg's Junk Online. Police reports are telling us there has been a violent shootout at a nightclub in Hove Beach. Mike Whiteley at the scene.
That's right, I'm inside the Perestroika nightclub, scene of a bloodbath. We've got several people who may be dead and blood everywhere. It's just horrific. One of the dead is thought to be the club's owner, Mikhail Faustin. It's the latest in a string of violent crimes in the Hove Beach area, and police are mystified as to what has caused them. In Hove Beach, Mike Whiteley, Weazel News. Back to you in the studio.
I don't really know where else we'd be but in the studio. In response, police have been in discussions regarding new ways to deal with the rising menace of Russian organized crime. In a city that was once dominated by the Italian mob, the changing demographics has seen an explosion of Russian, Albanian, Jamaican, Korean, and Chinese gangs, while police officers are struggling to keep up. In order to mask their ignorance, the police held a press conference in which they admitted, "We don't have a clue what is going on, but it isn't good."
In sports, drug-addled millionaires grabbing their nuts and running in a circle. It's what makes America great, and baseball is heating up in Liberty City as the Swingers announce they want to tear down their stadium to build a new one that is all luxury boxes so rich people can pass the time during boring games getting drunk in air-conditioned splendor. And I'll be in there too because I'm Brian Wilkinson. Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Another possible death in the biker wars. Liberty City's police commissioner has expressed fears that the war between two rival biker gangs, the Angels of Death and the Lost, has claimed another victim. The body of Jason Michaels, a member of the Alderney chapter of the Lost, was found in Broker, and police believe he was the victim of a gang hit.
Investors are jittery as the Bosdat closed down 23 points, sending markets into a tailspin where a bunch of assholes in suits jerked off on spreadsheets and cried, not for the hundreds of thousands of people who lost their jobs, but for their bonuses.
Following the recent spate of shootings in Hove Beach and Firefly Island, there is a new danger lurking for Broker residents. Arson. 2 fires were started in the Hove Beach area, one in an apartment and the other in a taxi garage. Fire chiefs are suggesting both were arson. When asked why, they said people saw 2 guys throwing Molotov cocktails in. Jim Harrison, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
A murder in Hove Beach.
Police identified 26-year-old Tom Rivas as the victim who was killed in front of the 69th Street Diner. Police are following all leads, including the one that the suspect, a white male, was a jilted lover. More on that as it develops. In Hove Beach, I'm Eric House, Weazel News.
In med news, the high prices charged by companies such as Beta Pharmaceuticals has led to an influx of cloned meds in the city.
With cloned meds, often patients don't realize they're dicing with death.
I thought I was taking something to help me with my panic attacks. I ended up in an erection for 72 hours. I lost my job as a school teacher.
72 hours? Wow. Police say be on the lookout for cloned meds. In Steinway, I'm Jenny Acorn, Weazel News.
Long-standing technologist Martin Graves spoke out yesterday against critics who said the unthinkable, that Web 2.0 is not that interesting. Although some commentators have begun to insist it's just another way for people to show off, other paid experts disagree.
Web 2.0 is the future. It's about integration and speed and user-created gibberish. I totally blog every day. Newspapers, television, and radio, like you, are done. Soon everyone will have a blog, and we'll all live in the blogosphere and have double-enders, end-to-end action.
The debate continues, although no one is quite sure why. I'm Jim Harrison, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Racing gets deadly.
Police have identified a deadly new kind of street racing, one that doesn't involve streets at all. They've had reports recently of both helicopters and powerboats being used for illegal races, with disastrous results as crashes and injuries abound. We hope the police can get this deadly new craze under control soon. One woman says she's had enough.
I'm tired of the rich making so much noise.
In Little Bay, Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
Weazel Business News, where the layoffs of the day are brought to you by Wing It Presentation Software. In the markets, confusing financial news as the Boss deck took a wobble, rebounded back, did a backflip, plummeted off a precipice with the news that the Feds are going to be adjusting interest rates at some point, and ended up without a clear pattern. Is it a bear or is it a bull bust? We're not sure, and I doubt you are either.
And get ready for some extreme glory in orbit as the hottest razor of the year, the Excelsior Extreme 9, looks to become the first razor in space. Cartoon space, that is. Kids are storming drugstores to pick up the theme razors of their heroes, Butch, Commander, and Dick, from the popular cartoon Republican Space Rangers. The company hopes that their You're Never Too Young to Shave Your Privates promotion will take off. This is Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Good news for commuters.
Caving into increasing political pressure, Mayor Ochoa has reopened the bridges over the Humboldt River. The Booth Tunnel and the Hickey Bridge linking Alderney and the city remain closed due to unnamed specific terror threats. Residents here are angry and a bit drunk. On the Broker Bridge, Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
Terror alert. It's the two things people fear most, linked together in a deadly cocktail of disaster, drugs, and terrorism. Police chiefs yesterday spoke in forthright terms about undeniable links between major drug dealing rings and terrorist cells operating in the city. In the city that used to love to party and now lives in fear of everything. This warning is something not to be taken lightly. We will stay with this story in the hope something interesting happens.
Certainly. Great news for fans of Laszlo, bad news for most of us. The shock jock who was thrown off the air over numerous payola scandals is back. Today, he formally launched his new talk show initiative, unironically called Integrity 2.0. After numerous radio jobs in several cities, well-reported drugs and money problems, questionable sexual scandals, and high-strung neurotic personality, we doubt he'll be on the air for long.
In the markets, the Bozak 100 closed up 12 points in heavy trading.
Fed Reserve up 0.5 point as discount rates slid and brought liquidity into the late morning feces. Bonds up slightly. Composite GNP expected to rally hedge funds as hardly anyone in America knows what any of this shit means, except that somehow you're getting fucked. We'll stay with that. Remember, Weazel News, your #1 source for financial information.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Another rat has leapt off a cesspit sinking ship. Yet another organized crime associate is testifying against their own kind today. Pavano Capo, Vito Dogmeat Minotti, spoke in court at the Civic Citadel. He admitted to a spree of murders he committed in the late 90s while testifying against other Pavano associates. Some argue recent blows to the 5 big families in Liberty City have created vacancies that have been filled by even more violent mobsters from Alderney.
Meanwhile, nightclub impresario Tony Prince is in the spotlight again, campaigning for greater leniency in the way nightlife is regulated, pointing out that nightclubs in Liberty City are a billion-dollar industry, especially for drug dealers, and that the current overzealous policing has turned nightclubs into ghost towns.
Controversial Deputy Mayor Bryce Dawkins is at it again. He caused a firestorm of controversy recently with a passionate and inappropriate homophobic rant that almost cost him his job. Now he's back trying to push through a city ordinance that would ban gays from becoming firefighters. His argument is that apparently the showers in most fire stations are communal, and the stress to the heterosexual firemen is causing them to cross over the fence. A spokesman for the fire service said, "I don't know what he's talking about."
He's always in the news, that Dawkins. This is Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
A forgery alert for the area.
Noose operatives abroad have started to intercept high-quality counterfeit $100 bills. So far, they have only turned up in Amsterdam and Belfast. These fakes, dubbed super notes, are printed on the highest quality paper and utilize the same printing process as real notes. A new spokesman called it a serious threat to the U.S. economy and suggested the bills are an act of war. Outside news headquarters, Eric House, Weazel News.
An update on the serial killer terrorizing the city. Police seem to think he struck again. The reason? A body turned up with a note attached to the now headless neck saying, "I've struck again." Police aren't drawing any conclusions and are still looking for major clues.
Another deadly shootout, this time in Fish Market. Police have found a warehouse littered with bodies of alleged members of a triad street gang as well as illegal automatic weapons. The district attorney believes that these murders may be related to the smuggling of contraband into the city. This is Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
A bank heist in Algonquin has police on a citywide manhunt.
The daring heist took place at a Bank of Liberty branch in downtown Algonquin earlier. One of the robbers was killed in the raid. He was identified as Michael Keene, a felon from Dukes. A bank customer, computer technician Eugene Reaper, attempted to stop the robbery and was murdered. Authorities are on the lookout for 3 suspects. In downtown Algonquin, Eric House, Weazel News.
Terror News Update. City officials announced yesterday that the West River crossings between Alderney and Algonquin may open as they are struggling to find a threat to keep them closed. A representative from the mayor's office noted, "We all need to get things back to normal."
Officials say 8 million registered sex offenders have accounts on myroomonline.net.
The popular social networking site, located at myroomonline.net, has politicians pledging to protect children by monitoring the rest of us. Many citizens agree.
That My Room is awful. The internet is full of perverts and should be turned off. I've had a My Room page with a picture of me taking a sponge bath, and nobody wants to be my friend.
Others love the My Room site.
I have 10,000 My Room friends. They're like my best friends, except they're complete strangers that stalk me. It's so Web 2.0.
Officials indicated if they hear Web 2.0 one more time, they'll smash someone in the face. This is Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Murder in Algonquin.
Police say lawyer Tom Goldberg was killed in his Algonquin office today. Officials are investigating all of the recent cases he had been working on to look for leads. He was an activist against the government, the police department, and corporate corruption, so suspects are innumerable. Jenny Acorn, Weazel News.
More news on the serial killer.
The city is in panic as the serial killer that has been tormenting the metropolitan area seems to have struck again. This time a man out walking late at night in Dukes had his limbs stolen, but his head left on, making the ongoing task of giving this killer a nickname even harder. Citizens say they've had enough.
I blame the lack of morals in this town. The strip clubs, the drug dealers, the whole fucking place overcharges. Jesus, it's getting to where you can't live in Liberty City.
Chief Detective John Atkinson was available for comment. Eric House, Weazel News.
After a barroom shootout between bikers and members of an Asian street gang, authorities confirmed that biker gangs, the law Frost and the Angels of Death are currently the most serious threats to personal safety in Liberty City. Police are looking at new ways of combating this menace. We'll keep you scared. This is Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Terror alert in Liberty City brought to you by gripe.org, the best way to talk online about illegal activities.
Police have increased their presence around the city's potential terrorist targets. The National Office of Security Enforcement has created a new threat level, which they have raised us to immediately. Liberty City is now officially on Charcoal 8 alert. This is more serious than the Red High 7 risk alert, but not as serious as the recently created Black Severe 9 alert. Eric House, Weazel News.
A violent shootout in Castle Gardens earlier as striking union officials were killed at a construction site. Allegations had previously surfaced that the unions were blackmailing the project developer, Yusef Amir. Mr. Amir had no comment aside from promising the development would be suspended as a mark of respect to those who passed.
In tech, reading is 1.0, say net-crazed kids. The National Library Center issued a startling report that libraries nationwide are shutting at the rate of 2 per day, with all libraries expected to close by the end of next year. Citing paper information retrieval as archaic, respondents said that the internet is better than the library. Well, you will get thrown out for jerking off or calling people idiotic noobs. This is Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
A horrific killing has occurred in Chinatown.
Motorbikes sped through the streets, scaring residents like this man.
Yeah, man, I saw them. They just got on their bikes and sped away from that arcade. They were really pissed. It must have been those violent video games they were playing.
Police are searching for a suspect with a foreign-sounding name and a sick addiction to video games. Outside an arcade where they use those dumb cards instead of quarters, Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
Some may call it a Greek myth we can all relate to, but wanting to kill your father and make love to your mother became deadly reality for a Rotterdam Hill area family. Newborn Joshua Hampton turned himself over to police today after brutally murdering his father in a jealous rage over what he called misuse of the milk machines.
Art news. The renovation of the Libertonian Museum continues after a new donation from the Cleethorpes family came in the form of forced labor force. As a gesture of goodwill, Mayor Julio Ochoa has agreed not to check on the immigration status of any workers on this project and thanked the Cleethorpes family. We spoke with one happy worker.
Esta gente me están forzando a trabajar por pan malo, agua y un sitio para dormir. Ayúdame, por favor, ayúdame.
The generosity of the Cleethorpes family knows no bounds. I'm Brian Wilkinson, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
A brutal shootout left many dead at the Triangle Club in Bohan.
Police are searching for a white male in his 30s for questioning. Some witnesses suggested he had a European accent. More on this story as it develops.
Also in sex and death news, we've got an Oedipus alert.
Joshua Hampton and the blushing bride/mother have jumped bail and are currently wanted by police. Hampton was the newborn facing charges of murdering his father in order to marry his mother. He's currently thought to be heading to Florida, where all manner of weird behavior is apparently tolerated. Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
The curious case of the ship left deserted and the docks took a turn for the worse yesterday. Police say the platypus's mate Dave Bossoy was found dead. Officials say he appeared to have been involved in some kind of sadomasochistic act and was found covered in whip marks and human waste. The rest of the crew, thought to be a combination of Chinese, Egyptian, and Europeans, are all missing. The captain was found dead in the harbor last month. This is Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
A helicopter explosion just south of Algonquin has claimed the life of a Russian businessman.
Edward Borodin died in a helicopter crash just south of Algonquin. Although some eyewitnesses suggested foul play and a dogfight between this and an unknown helicopter, local FIB officials tell me this was just an accident. One representative said it's clearly a tragic accident, and due to the increased terror threat, some citizens are suffering from hysterical hallucinations. Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
Helicopter death of the day brought to you by eugenicsincorporated.com. In wide stance news, it's the issue that's tearing American politics apart, even though most people don't care. Family Values Senator Travis Evans has been caught on tape soliciting sex in a Florida park men's bathroom. Senator Evans has been a leading backer of the marriage amendment. The senator claims he was reaching out to constituents to fully understand the issue. Residents of Liberty City are split on the issue of same-sex marriage.
If we allow them to marry, I won't have anyone to hang out with or go clubbing. As soon as people get married, they're lame and start asking you to be involved in three-ways. Do you know how horrible it is to be pinned between two fat, middle-aged people?
I slept with two guys, and the subject of marriage never even came up.
Former Secretary of Security Enforcement Bobby Jefferson is going to be giving an address at the Civic Citadel in Liberty City next month on the growing threat of Russian and Eastern European crime in the United States. This is Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Weazel News brought to you by Big Log Cereal. Who doesn't love Big Logs in the morning? A fiery explosion in Northwood. Police are concerned that terrorism is the cause of a huge explosion at a fuel depot in Northwood earlier. All of the casualties were known associates of the Ancelotti crime family, including senior capo Anthony Tony Black Spoleto. However, police are convinced this is not another example of organized crime running out of control and have requested additional anti-terror funds from Congress.
In real estate news, despite a recent wobble, the market in Liberty City remains one of the strongest in the country. This despite the terrible rise in crime and low quality of life index scores in the city. The reason some analysts say is obvious. The rest of the country is really boring and nobody in their right mind would want to live there. Either way, we hope prices stay high and it keeps the riffraff out of town and in the suburbs where they belong. Of course, we're talking about minorities.
Tiny internet entrepreneur and wannabe Algonquin playboy Tony McTony today announced he was going to sue LC24 magazine when it described him as a Napoleonic twit on account of his tiny stature and overbearing manner. Mr. McTony commented,
"It just ain't right. Napoleon was 5'2", whereas Tony McTony is 5'3", so it ain't the same at all. Plus, I ain't never lost a war in Russia, and I got a better logo."
We will stay on this important news story. This is Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Great news for people unfortunate enough to live in Alderney.
The Hickey Bridge and Booth Tunnel that link Algonquin and Alderney were reopened today, easing pressure on transport and making the greater metropolitan area a complete unit once again. Locals are rejoicing, but some are still worried about terror. One police officer here told me,
"We pushed hard for a 24-hour curfew, and this is what we've got? Open bridges and freedom? Now life's getting back to normal. This is a bad day for our city. It makes me want to beat the shit out of somebody."
Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
In tech, Web 2.0 is here to stay, and social networking is the future, say internet experts. You are virtually everywhere and nowhere with Web 2.0. Experts say if you don't have a blog or a My Room page, then you are lame and should die.
He made sneakers people would kill for and presented himself as a health nut extraordinaire, but Eris CEO Pete Vassell has checked himself into a rehab after admitting a serious addiction to steroids amid numerous reports of roid rage. Mr. Vassell, who claimed to be all about health, is being sued by 4 employees who say he demanded they squeeze the zits on his back. This is Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Prison break. We go live to the scene.
An escaped felon is on the loose, and police say it's Aiden O'Malley. O'Malley was being transported from a police station in Algonquin where he was giving evidence. He was being taken back to the Alderney State Correctional Facility. The convoy was ambushed by 2 trucks while going through the Booth Tunnel. O'Malley is a white male in his mid-40s. Although American-born, he speaks with an Irish brogue. He was assisted by 2 accomplices. One was American, but the other had a foreign accent. Outside the Booth Tunnel. "Hey, shut up, you moron! I'm on the radio!" Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
In pet news, some Algonquin residents encourage feline companionship, but Steve Leeds of Little Bay hates cats. He says he is tired of these narcoleptic demon-spawn aliens, especially one known in the neighborhood as Mr. Doodles, who in a strange development has been shitting in his garden.
Has your kidney been stolen? Urban myths are completely out of control in Liberty City. Police say they have had reports of weird floating cities out to sea in underground palaces. Others continue to claim a Sasquatch roams the city, while still others allege alligators dropped down the toilet are growing into enormous sewer monsters. All in all, the city is full of lunatics. We will stay with this story. In the fifth dimension, I'm Chad Pendleton, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
It's a bad day for Deputy Police Commissioner Francis McCreary.
McCreary's older brother Derrick was shot in front of him in Algonquin, and his younger brother Gerald has been arrested in Alderney on racketeering charges. As if that wasn't enough, Public Liberty Online, a liberal opinion website, is throwing corruption allegations at him. Eric House, Weazel News.
The Bosdack skyrocketed 5 points today as the American dream became even more of a confusing mess controlled by bankers and rich investors. Growth and value indices showed higher than average default on ARM loans, but not 15-year fixed liquid commodities funds in an effort to thoroughly confuse you and make you think that all this shit really means something.
A 14-year-old boy was reunited with his family today after spending an amazing 6 years lost in a crepilla store in Alderney.
Man, it was a nightmare. Every time I thought I found my way out, I'd end up back in home furnishings. I never want to see a floating candle again.
The Swedish furniture giant has refused to comment, but nobody understands their stupid language anyway. Their website is crepilla.com. This is Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
A policeman is dead, and the city mourns.
Deputy Police Commissioner Francis McCreary was shot dead in Algonquin. Although there were rumors of corruption surrounding Mr. McCreary, many believed he was a fine officer who served the city well through difficult times. In an unrelated incident, Mr. McCreary's brother Gerald McCreary has been arrested on an outstanding warrant. Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
The Bosdack skyrocketed 5 points today as the American dream became even more of a confusing mess controlled by bankers and rich investors. Growth and value indices showed higher than average default on ARM loans, but not 15-year fixed liquid commodities funds in an effort to thoroughly confuse you and make you think that all this shit really means something.
A 14-year-old boy was reunited with his family today after spending an amazing 6 years lost in a crepilla store in Alderney.
Man, it was a nightmare. Every time I thought I found my way out, I'd end up back in home furnishings. I never want to see a floating candle again.
The Swedish furniture giant has refused to comment, but nobody understands their stupid language anyway. Their website is crepilla.com. This is Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
A criminal has been found dead. But first, Weazel News is brought to you by Trackify. Track your children, or they'll be abducted and killed. Now we go live to Mike Whiteley.
Police have recovered the body of Aidan O'Malley, the suspected former terrorist who was busted out of a prison van in the Booth Tunnel. At the time, it was presumed that he had been sprung by friends. Now it seems he was freed in order to be silenced. We'll stay with this story at Comrades Bar, 3 gin and tonics deep. I'm Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
The war on drugs is being won one line at a time. Noose operatives have intercepted a speedboat loaded with cocaine at the mouth of the Humboldt River. The boat was being driven by Andrei Maximov of Israeli-Russian descent, who had been living in Liberty City for the last 10 years. A second arrest was made. Russian businessman Dmitry Raskolov was held by police but released without charge.
In sperm news, it's the fact that will shock no one. Scientists paid by TV companies yesterday announced that video games may cause impotence in men. Although they could not prove the claim, they said it was probable given the amount of time people spent sitting around, and also because most things cause impotence if they don't increase TV ratings. It's time to switch joysticks, boys. This is Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
A high-speed chase through the Liberty City subway system left 2 members of the lost biker gang dead earlier. One of the dead bikers has been identified as Jim Fitzgerald of Alderney. It seems the biker problem remains completely out of control. Despite Mayor Ochoa's insistence to the contrary, it seems that gang crime is completely out of control. Do you hear me? Out of control!
Juice alert! Sports officials have uncovered a steroid scandal with the Liberty City Swingers.
Fans are furious at the revelation the baseball team has been doping at an inadequate level. Sarah Chen of Bohan says it's hard to notice the difference of players on steroids.
I thought all men have back acne, violent mood swings, and tiny packages. You mean they were roiding? I feel cheated. I want my money back.
Eric House, Plus Weazel News.
An update on the Dragon Brain Massacre.
The dragons are flying upside down and leaving some fans literally headless in what police say was a bloody fight outside a Duke's Theater showing the hit movie. Uber fans have been disrupting screenings by dressing in costumes and speaking to each other in Middle English. Police are still looking for the suspect. In Dukes, I'm Jenny Acorn, reminding you to visit DragonBrainTheMovie.com.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Now, this Weazel News update brought to you by Lager Beer. An update on the Dragon Brain Massacre. Congressional liberals have joined with a family values group called Citizens Understand Medieval Games Undermine Loving Parents, who charge that the altercation at a movie theater during the movie Dragon Brain could have been prevented if video games were banned. Police arrested Chris Ryan yesterday and charged him with the murder of a fellow moviegoer at a recent showing of Dragon Brain. Officials say they apprehended Ryan as he was deflowering a maiden in the privy. Ryan's lawyer argues his client lives like an elf and has no electricity.
A party has ended in gunfire.
Guests at the fancy Majestic Hotel on Middle Park were disturbed by a shootout. Diamond dealer Isaac Roth and several business associates were found dead in the penthouse. Mr. Roth had previously been accused of importing illegal conflict diamonds, while police had also been investigating Roth's links to the mob. Now they're searching for his killer. At the Majestic Hotel, I'm Jenny Acorn, Weazel News.
The City Council has voted to build the Swingers a new stadium at taxpayers' expense, reversing course from an earlier decision. They indicated that it's much more important to build free stadiums for millionaires to grab their nuts and run in a circle than fund schools. Weazel News agrees.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
A bloody massacre in Alderney.
Responding to reports of gunfire, authorities found the bodies of several men at an old oil refinery in the Actor Industrial Park. Despite the victims being known mob associates, the National Office of Security Enforcement is calling the incident an act of terrorism. Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
Breaking news. Choppers of death are terrorizing residents. Jenny Acorn, a girl, is on the scene.
It's like Vietnam in Liberty City, except the weed is overpriced and the musicians are too scared to write decent protest music. A helicopter battle in the sky had residents fleeing for their lives.
Yeah, it was like pow, pow, pow. He's up, he's down, there's smoke everywhere. A stray round hit this bitch in the head. Bow down. I'm drinking some beers with my boy watching this shit, high-fiving, and I said to my friend, it was like Jack Howitzer up in here. Can I just say, Cheryl, you better not be pregnant, you bitch!
Police say they are following up on tips and hope to apprehend the helicopter assailant soon. Jenny Acorn, Weazel News.
The clone doctor has been arrested by police sting after what officials say is a sick experiment. Dr. Johan Kleitzel announced recently that he had successfully cloned himself and advocated that sexual relations with your clone are awesome. However, police disagree with him when they raided his laboratory and found several clones of himself of varying ages and what officials say was an underage clone sex den. Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Weazel News Terror Alerts, brought to you by Wiz Wireless, who remind you to help stop terrorism by signing up for a camera phone plan.
Many are dead after another shocking shootout at the autoerotic car showroom in West Alderney.
Some of the bodies have been identified as associates of the Pavano crime family.
We have taken a number of possible suspects into custody. They're currently being extracted to one of our offshore questioning centers. You'll know this incident was an act of terror when we have their confessions.
All right, this attack is part of a pattern that is concerning police who suspect a mob war is raging within Liberty City's 5 families and may be involving other crime families as well, including the Alderney mob, who crime experts claim have long sought to be included at the top table of crime in this city. Several recent shootouts and executions have led some to call this a city in the midst of a mob reign of terror. But some residents say they like the mafia.
The mafia is so cute on those TV shows. You can really identify with the struggles they go through. I mean, they're just like us. They got bills to pay, a cheating husband who is fucking your best friend, and homicidal anger. We've all been there.
In West Alderney, Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Is your money fake?
Liberty City has been flooded with fake $100 bills recently. Authorities fear that 1 in every 50 notes is counterfeit. News of these notes has affected the currency market, with the dollar falling against all major currencies, sending us closer to third world status. Outside the Bank of Liberty, Eric House, Weazel News.
The steroid scandal continues. The Liberty Swingers yesterday announced the resignation of head coach Paul Cerlati and fired several players who simply weren't taking enough steroids to play ball properly. Fans agreed with the decision.
What am I supposed to tell my kid? That he should wreck his body for a few years and get rich? The baseball fairies have a lot of nerve making more money than me. It sets a bad example for my kid.
The remaining players have vowed to train and take whatever is needed to win, which is all that matters anyway.
You can already email your dog and read blogs written by dolphins, but when does technology go too far? After the announcement years ago by scientists that they had successfully cloned a human, some wondered if you would soon be able to make love to yourself and what the moral implications would be. Leading clone researcher Dr. Johann Kleitzel, who admitted to cloning himself, announced that doppelganger sex is okay, since it is with yourself.
I've always fantasized about my perfect abs and tight buttocks. And now that I've made an identical clone, I love myself. It is not disgusting. It is beautiful. Excuse me, but now I must make love to myself.
Several groups have said they will press Congress to outlaw the practice. This is Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Now for the news brought to you by YourMexicanDoctor.com. All the pharmaceuticals you need. The reign of crack is coming to an end. Bohan-based drug dealer Elizabetha Torres won't be pushing crack rocks on a corner near you anytime soon. That's because Judge Mitt Burrows handed down a 300-year prison sentence as she was convicted of 30 counts of cocaine distribution at 10 years a count.
The Center for American Justice, Bribery, and Freedom issued a stunning report that lower student aptitude tests in elementary schools indicate fans of professional wrestling are still breeding. Despite knowing that it's fake, wrestling fans pay more attention to these soap operas for men than contributing to society. The group advocates mass sterilization at all wrestling events, which they indicate will raise test scores in as little as 10 years.
And more importantly, in celebrity news, the big story of the day, fans of Filthy Rich eras Chloe Parker are outraged at the news that her backing dancer and now fiancé has countered her prenup with a request for a $3 million dowry. Parker's agent has issued a statement saying that this is just paperwork and the couple are still very much in love. This is Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Weazel News, where the assassination attempt of the day is always brought to you by Al Dente's. All the Mamma Mia you can eat.
Is anyone safe?
Even our politicians are now under attack. He's the former Secretary of Security Enforcement, but Bobby Jefferson's motorcade was attacked while making its way from Grand Easton Terminal to the Civic Citadel, where Mr. Jefferson had long been scheduled to give a speech about organized crime. Courageously, Mr. Jefferson took to the stage after the attack and delivered the speech. The mayor vowed to make these new forms of organized crime a priority. Mr. Jefferson's speech was not a xenophobic rant. He praised hardworking immigrants, particularly one nameless man who ensured that he could deliver his speech. At the Civic Citadel, I'm Jenny Acorn, Weazel News.
The war on fun is being won. And Nightlife Mr. Big, Tony Prince, has again spoken out about the city's over-aggressive policing of nightclubs after he had 2 clubs temporarily closed by the city last week. Mr. Prince told reporters outside the court that the dorks in the LCPD are ruining this city, and it's time we the people stood up to their bullying. Liberty City was founded on the principles of liberty, getting shit-faced and grinding on strangers. Please don't turn us into a suburb.
In sweatshop news, sportswear megacorporation Eris has issued a statement defending its use of child labor in developing countries. In a statement on the Eris website, founder and CEO Eric Vassell defended child labor practices and pointed out the importance of montages and feel-good sports movies in the modern American psyche. This is Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
A murder in a hospital. Anthony Corrado, a state's witness in a major crime sting, was murdered at the West Dyke Memorial Hospital in Alderney. Mr. Corrado was down to testify in the DA's case against Alderney businessman Jimmy Pegorino. Mr. Pegorino is believed to be the head of a crime ring operating on the Alderney side of the West River.
An update on the alcoholic airline incident. The Air Soul pilot who shouted things like kamikaze and look no hands as he was coming into land at Francis International Airport Airport has issued an official apology to passengers. "I was trying to impress the air hostesses and may have got a little carried away," said the disgraced father of two. He went on to say, "I'll never mix my spirits again."
Meanwhile, in transport news, with traffic so bad and taxis still incredibly expensive, some urban planners are asking the unaskable. Should we reclose the bridges? One radical urban planner said bridges are overrated as a means of crossing rivers. Until everyone can fly or can teleport, this will remain a city in crisis. Unfortunately, this man's views were so radical he has been locked up in a secure mental home for several months now.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Tragedy at a wedding in Suffolk earlier.
A man, possibly a jilted lover, shot the groom, 31-year-old Roman Bellic, and then turned the gun on himself. Police are looking for the groom's cousin for questioning, although he's not a suspect. In Suffolk, Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
Also in death news, police are saying WTF and LMAOing at the death of a Los Santos man pushing the limits of technology and decency. An experiment with the internet-connected kitchen of the future ended in tragedy. Charles Pathmanson was found dead, apparently killed by his internet-connected toaster. Police say hackers had been tormenting Pathmanson for weeks, breaking into his online fridge, e-oven, and web toaster and causing havoc. In a last resort, Pathmanson was attempting to install a new motherboard in the toaster when hackers turned it on, electrocuting him.
In pharmaceutical abuse news, the generation that gobbled ecstasy, snorted rails with abandon, and entered into the K-hole now has mortgages and small children as they nervously await the backlash from partying with drugs that rearrange your DNA. Experts say it's a time bomb and you should never relax. And you'll pay for your fun someday. Callista Brown, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Tragedy at a wedding in Suffolk earlier.
Brides may worry about a guest looking more beautiful than them on their wedding day, but they don't expect the woman to steal their thunder by getting shot. Well, that's exactly what happened in Suffolk at the wedding of Roman and Mallory Bellic. A guest, Kate McCreary, a 28-year-old woman from Dukes, was killed in a drive-by shooting. The groom's cousin, Nico Bellic, is said to have left the scene soon after that shooting. He's wanted for questioning by police, but not as a suspect in the case. In Suffolk, Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
Also in death news, police are saying WTF and LMAOing at the death of a Los Santos man pushing the limits of technology and decency. An experiment with the internet-connected kitchen of the future ended in tragedy. Charles Pathmanson was found dead, apparently killed by his internet-connected toaster. Police say hackers had been tormenting Pathmanson for weeks, breaking into his online fridge, e-oven, and web toaster and causing havoc. In a last resort, Pathmanson was attempting to install a new motherboard in the toaster when hackers turned it on, electrocuting him.
In pharmaceutical abuse news, the generation that gobbled ecstasy, snorted rails with abandon, and entered into the K-hole now has mortgages and small children as they nervously await the backlash from partying with drugs that rearrange your DNA. Experts say it's a time bomb and you should never relax. And you'll pay for your fun someday. Callista Brown, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Sadness at Happiness Island, as police say they found a beached and mostly destroyed speedboat, a crashed helicopter, and the body of Alderney-based mob boss Jimmy Pegorino. Pegorino is the alleged ringleader of an Alderney crime family which had always been in the shadow of the 5 Algonquin families. Police are searching for clues. In more wide stance news, family values proponent and arch-conservative Deputy Mayor Bryce Dawkins has been reeling since photos emerged of him kissing a male fitness instructor who lives in an apartment Mr. Dawkins paid for out of public funds. Initially, a representative said, quote, "Bryce Dawkins is a family man and a committed heterosexual. These pictures are obviously digitally altered." However, later news emerged that he has not resigned and has left town headed for rehab. Speaking from rehab, Mr. Dawkins, who says he is addicted to bad behaviors and blames the devil and liberal society claimed he was now, quote, 100% heterosexual and would continue to stand up for what he believed in, even if he was, himself, just a man and a work in progress. Mr. Dawkins said he saw no reason to resign.
Also in bullshit news, the quest for the perfect chocolate starfish ended in tragedy today in Broker when a man lighting his fart live on the internet died. Filippo Catalano was found dead in his apartment in what police say is a growing epidemic amongst metrosexual men and body-conscious models. Now, the backside has become a fashion statement, and men and women are bleaching their balloon knot and in some cases singeing the hairs, a practice that ended in tragedy. Police say Catalano was in a webcam chat room where such activities are shared and died suddenly. Investigators are on the scene. We'll have more on this as it happens. Allison Mayberry, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
A body has been found on Happiness Island. Police were confused when they arrived here and found 2 crashed helicopters and a dead Russian gangster. The body has been identified as that of Dmitry Raskolov, a businessman based in Hove Beach. Police have long believed him to be at the forefront of the new wave of immigrant-led organized crime. Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
In more wide stance news, family values proponent and arch-conservative Deputy Mayor Bryce Dawkins has been reeling since photos emerged of him kissing a male fitness instructor who lives in an apartment Mr. Dawkins paid for out of public funds. Initially, a representative said, quote, Bryce Dawkins is a family man and a committed heterosexual. These pictures are obviously digitally altered. However, later news emerged that he has not resigned and has left town headed for rehab. Speaking from rehab, Mr. Dawkins, who says he is addicted to bad behaviors and blames the devil and liberal society, claimed he was now, quote, 100% heterosexual and would continue to stand up for what he believed in, even if he was, himself, just a man and a work in progress. Mr. Dawkins said he saw no reason to resign.
Also in bullshit news, the quest for the perfect chocolate starfish ended in tragedy today in Broker when a man lighting his fart live on the internet died. Filippo Catalano was found dead in his apartment in what police say is a growing epidemic amongst metrosexual men and body-conscious models. Now, the backside has become a fashion statement, and men and women are bleaching their balloon knot and in some cases singeing the hairs, a practice that ended in tragedy. Police say Catalano was in a webcam chat room where such activities are shared and died suddenly. Investigators are on the scene. We'll have more on this as it happens. Allison Mayberry, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Dumpster diving can make you a millionaire.
You'd never believe what people throw out in the trash. That's what homeless Vietnam veteran Jerry Kapowitz thought when he found a pouch of diamonds in the city dump. Initial appraisals estimate the pouch of diamonds to be worth about $2 million. Mr. Kapowitz won't be homeless for much longer. He plans to use his new wealth to open a gun shop and liquor store in Vice City. Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
Suspected mafia godfather John Gravelli has passed away peacefully in his hospital bed before the DA could bring him to trial. Mr. Gravelli, believed to have been head of the Gambetti crime family since 1978, lived a long and colorful life. He takes his secrets to the grave with him.
In traffic and transport, crews are laying cable on Columbus Avenue between Iron Street and Jade Street, so the roads are closed. But that's what you get with union labor. Other crews are laying pipe with a girl named Brandy.
First it was the Fruits, then it was the Tossers, and now the Unix fans are getting involved. Users of the Unix operating system are outraged that a girl in Albany City has installed the open source operating system on her PC.
Who does this newbie bitch think she is? It clearly states on the website that Unix is just for men. Everybody knows girls write bad code. That's why I've never spoken to one. Woot!
The girl has been moved to a safe house until the fanboys can find somebody new to grief and terrorize online. Callista Brown, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Liberty City remains under siege as another body was found, this time at the Liberty Ferry Terminal in Alderney City. A decapitated jogger who was getting fit in the wrong place at the wrong time. Detective John Atkinson has been working the case.
Oh, thank God he did it again. I was beginning to lose my media profile. We'll be making an arrest soon. How's my hair look?
More importantly, in celebrity news, Gorgeous model Carrie McIntosh is suing an unnamed celebrity retreat in Los Santos for falling off the wagon. She claims that she was drunk within an hour of leaving the center and then crashed her car on the way to buy an 8-ball.
Illegal immigration legislation is on Capitol Hill, as both liberals and conservatives struggle to figure out a way to use the issue in the next election without actually helping citizens or migratory workers trying to feed their families. Eric House is on the streets of Bohan.
Illegal immigration. Is it legal and does it affect every job? Local entertainment worker Xanadu certainly says so.
It's a huge problem. It costs me work. The Eastern Europeans, the Asians, Alaskans, all these illegal immigrants come in and they take all the good lap dances. The strip clubs are totally overwhelmed with them, and I'm a hardworking American. Hey, I'll let you stick your face between my tits for $20.
Some say that the American work ethic will persevere. In Bohan, I'm Eric House, Weazel News.
Make it 10, honey.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
The unnamed serial killer who has plagued Liberty City for months and baffled the police department's nickname division has been found dead, himself seemingly the victim of a murder.
The man, who was found with several journals confessing to his crimes, appears to have targeted the wrong victim and been killed in a fight. The killer's name was Eddie Lowe. Police are searching his apartment in a quiet Duke suburb for more information. Residents were angry.
It's always the same thing when they catch a mass murderer. He was real quiet, they say. I say we start shooting quiet people and we won't have this problem. Loners too. And my handsy stepdad.
Wow. Eric House, Weazel News.
In traffic and transport, crews still working on pavement resurfacing on Frankfort Avenue between Hematite and Iron Street. Roadwork is causing delays.
The Liberty City lip-reading bee ended in scandal yesterday after 8-year-old Hinje Maldonado lost out in the semifinals and began mouthing at the judges to read his lips. He then called them all pedophiles and said he hoped they died in a fiery accident. The lip-reading bee replaced the spelling bee after officials admitted all computers have spell checkers now and you don't really need to know how to spell. I'm Jim Harrison, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Email could be outlawed.
Congress is considering legislation outlawing emailing while driving, citing the bittersweet email device as the cause for several traffic accidents. Some residents say the bittersweet ruins marriages.
Oh, I totally hate those things. My husband likes that damn thing more than me, even after I had a facelift and new tits.
This reporter thinks they look great. In Middle Park East, I'm Eric House, Weazel News.
The French president's comments on television recently that he is, quote, very close to asking for the Statue of Happiness back, end quote, has angered proud Americans everywhere. Lady Happiness was presented to the United States by France in 1886 as a symbol of joy at 100 years free from British spelling. Relations between the two countries have been strained ever since President Lawton decreed that French-made outfits were to be renamed slutty Halloween costumes. Weazel News brought to you by the Relax Power X motorized scooter. Take the weight off your feet.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Activists are out in droves protesting possible stem cell legislation on Capitol Hill, despite the fact nobody actually knows what on earth a stem cell is or does. Jenny Acorn is downtown.
It's gang warfare between religious crazies and idiot liberals as the stem cell battle goes to the streets. I asked residents what they thought of stem cells.
Oh my God, I totally love stem cells. They're the hot shit this season.
One woman says the issue personally affects her life.
It's terrible. Last week a dude cold stole all my stem cells. You hear me, Keyshawn? I want my fucking stem cells back.
Reporting from the meat quarter, I'm Jenny Acorn, Weazel News.
In Vino Veritas, inside sources close to Joe Lawton told Weazel News that the president admitted when drunk that he is scared shitless of China. Lawton, who is known for his take-no-shit approach to foreign policy, is reported to have downed an impressive 16 beers at a fundraiser promoting guns in the home. The president has denied all memory of the event.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
In traffic and Fatso News, you see the obese and the elderly on them all the time. But the motorized scooter craze is extending to people who are just tired of walking.
Sales of the Relax Power X motorized scooter are up 300%. People from all ages and incomes are getting in on the craze of not walking.
Being homeless is really fucking tiring. I love the Relax Power X motorized scooter. It's got a special compartment I can take a dump in.
Others say it's the next big hip-hop phenomenon.
You bling it out, drop it, some rims, some nitrous, bitches, dog, bitches.
In Steinway, Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
It's a fact that women phone in sick more, can't keep a secret, and are scared of spiders. But in some countries, they're actually leaders. Some don't agree.
Women shouldn't be politicians. Female leaders always sound like they're telling me off. Like I've been a bad little boy. Ain't no bitch telling me what to do.
So stay in the kitchen, ladies. Your family needs you. Eric House, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Wiz Wireless, one of the largest telecommunications companies in the world, has unveiled a new business plan to sell flashy new phones with features you don't need at ridiculous prices that lock you into shitty contracts.
Wiz describes it as a technological revolution. One man says his Wiz Wireless phone failed him when he needed it most, during a shootout.
Yo, this dude came out shooting. All the pictures that came out of my camera phone were blurry. It's a real tragedy. I was gonna sell that shit to some paparazzi and shit.
Others have complained the video feature on the newer models is disappointing and leads to pixelation in junk shots. Jenny Acorn, Weazel News.
Anime is not just for creepy losers anymore, say Vinewood executives, as two big anime films in theaters are wowing audiences. But some say it degrades women.
My husband, he makes me dress up like Princess Ropa bubblegum and say, I am a radioactive whore. It's not true. He puts it on the internet and sells subscriptions.
Women's groups are organizing to protest the films.
Anime is about fetishism of women. I'm starting a group called Asian Stereotypes, Sickened Families, Unity Careers, and Karma.
I'm Jim Harrison, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Men are calming down in whole new ways, say stress experts.
Before, to calm down, a man would drink a bottle of whiskey and give his woman 2 black eyes. Now, increasing numbers of men are turning to aromatherapy.
Oh, man, yeah, that aromatherapy stuff is great. Oh, Jesus, anything that gives me, that sort of memory, that odor of, me mother's fluff. I used to slit 3 or 4 throats a day, but now, no problems at all. Totally calm, really chilled out, man. No more rape and pillage, except the odd one.
Sounds great. In Willis, I'm Eric House, Weazel News.
The first drive-through Botox clinic has opened in Los Santos. Customers simply talk into the speaker and drive to the window where a stoned high school dropout will stab poison into your face, removing wrinkles and saving marriages. In traffic and transit, no major problems, except for a couple of jackknife trucks with people on fire. Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Terror in the skies.
A transatlantic flight from Francis International to London nearly turned into a bloodbath when a man became hostile with a pair of nail clippers. Witnesses claim that security officials were preoccupied with strip searching a much older gentleman, allowing the 37-year-old man from Bohan to sneak the deadly weapon through undetected. Thankfully, nobody was seriously injured, but 9 passengers received a nasty pinch. Hey, what do you mean I gotta take my shoes off? Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
In more important celebrity news, there aren't many young men who haven't had a sticky run-in with a photo of January Natasha Vasquez at some point in their lives. But her extreme weight loss in recent weeks is proving a real turnoff for teenage masturbators.
The magic's gone. I'm not cracking one out to a chick who looks like a 10-year-old boy refugee.
In traffic and transit, a man caught exposing himself in his car has caused delays in Dukes after he apparently climaxed and rammed into a delivery truck. This is Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Breaking WASP news.
Lyle Cleethorpes V was caught in a compromising position with a young Brazilian man in a Duke's truck stop restroom earlier today. Cleethorpes is well known for his Playboy image and a string of model girlfriends. After removing the ball from his mouth, the self-styled LC5 told police that the 2 men were old friends and had been applying sunblock. In a truck stop bathroom, I'm Jenny Acorn, Weazel News.
Can TV get any lower? A new Me TV show is pushing the limits as they go on the hunt for the world's sexiest terrorist. The program's producer told Weazel News,
"Oh man, terrorist videos are the new music videos. Women have always loved a bad boy. Insurgents are getting more TV time than ever. A lot of women fantasize about terrorists. The world's sexiest terrorist is going to be the new hot show. Who doesn't love a foreign accent? It's gotten me a lot of tail."
The show is due to air later this year on a rival network, so don't bother watching. Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Weazel News is brought to you by the show Waning with the Stars. Who says that fast food companies are bad for the environment? Cluck and Bell might sell the greasiest and saltiest fried food in the world, but according to the Parks Commission of Liberty City, the restaurant chain has single-handedly eradicated the pigeon problem that plagued the city for so many years since they introduced their mysterious dark meat a few years ago.
Pop singer Samantha Muldoon has arrived back from safari in Kenya with yet another baby boy.
Oh my God! I couldn't resist. He was the cutest kid in the village, and his father basically threw him at me. I'm gonna name him Hector Tope. I just have to adopt a third world kid whenever I go on vacation. What? I'm not vapid.
Celebrities are being praised for giving third world children the chance to grow up stalked by the American paparazzi and appearing as permanent guests on idiotic afternoon talk shows. Muldoon reportedly gave each of her friends a Vietnamese baby for Christmas last year. Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
In a study sponsored by the gaming industry, doctors say that gambling releases the same amount of endorphins as exercise. Each hand of poker has the same medical benefits as a jog or a game of tennis. As proof that gambling encourages longevity, they point to the statistical fact that most casinos are full of old people.
What would you do if you won the lottery instead of being a loser listening to the radio? A truck driver in Las Venturas stepped forward to claim a $437 million lottery prize yesterday. When asked what he planned to do with his newfound fortune, the 43-year-old ex-con confirmed that he would be keeping all the money for himself.
I say fuck charity. Nobody ever did me any favors. I'm gonna buy me an island, bone some models, and take it from there. I'm rich, bitches!
Sounds like a winner to me. I'm Frigid Callista Brown, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Is your scout leader touching your kids?
As he bounced a young scout on his knee, Scoutmaster Scott Phillips said, "It's time to break the kitty fiddler stereotype once and for all."
People lump us in with ice cream truck drivers, and it's not fair. We teach these young men pyromania and extreme right-wing values. In a survival situation, sometimes you have to keep a boy warm.
Is terror affecting your hair? An Algonquin woman says so. Maria Chavovich said that in the absence of any other explanation, her bad hair day must be the responsibility of the Taliban, and called Noose. When the anti-terror agents responded, they found her blockaded in her home, having stayed up for 5 days straight watching Weazel News and screaming about how the Taliban have ruined her hair. I'm Brian Wilkinson, Weazel News. We're all screwed.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
More scandal on America's Next Top Hooker. A judge on the hit TV show claimed at a press conference yesterday that one of the contestants failed to swallow despite his persistent demands to the contrary. He went on to accuse her of not being a whore at all and using the program to try to launch a television career. The contestant has assured producers that she is fully committed to becoming America's Next Top Hooker and was just having an off day. The pair has since settled their differences in his dressing room.
Lewis Parker made a groundbreaking discovery Tuesday night and has been making news ever since. After searching for over 3 minutes, the area man located free pictures of a college-aged Australian girl naked online. Parker bookmarked the site and when he finished, felt ashamed. I think we've all made a map of Hawaii we weren't proud of. I'm Jim Harrison, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
It's the new craze. America loves eating junk food and watching people on TV cook.
Celebrity chef Frederic Brunlor has been told that his reality cooking show will be dropped by the network if he doesn't start to swear more or throw hot oil in people's faces. The show's executive producer told us people aren't interested in the food. They want to see a foul-mouthed European alcoholic with a superiority complex reducing an American housewife to tears on national TV. Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
Some say that a 9-hour orgasm sounds like a dream. Others say it's a nightmare. Tantric sex practitioners have admitted that being the ultimate lover comes at a price, as there simply aren't enough hours in the day. Experts say you should complete sex as fast as possible so you can resume hating yourself. Now in traffic.
A traffic jam alert. There will be one in your neighborhood soon. If you don't like it, fuck off and work in the suburbs. This is Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Does email cause heart disease?
Yes, that's the answer researchers found when studying 100 internet users. Email is especially bad because it carries heart-blocking trans fats and viruses like the I Love You virus or the tranny worm, which causes herpes. With herpes, I'm Jenny Acorn, Weazel News.
Losing weight is easy according to Liturgics. Sales of Liturgics have gone through the roof ever since socialite Jill von Krostenberg signed an endorsement deal to promote the product to young girls. When asked about diet and exercise, she replied, "I don't exercise, but I also don't eat. They kind of balance each other out." The revolutionary formula of caffeine, laxatives, diuretics, painkillers, and amphetamines have made Liturgics the most popular dietary supplement on the market today. Others say you should visit Liturgics.com and come to your own conclusions. Allison Mayberry, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
We've all eaten something we shouldn't have when intoxicated, and dog food is no different. According to research published by San Fierro University today, man's best friend eats better than the average customer at Wigwam Burger. Parents are being encouraged to put their children's health first and fork out the extra few dollars to buy brands like Bitchin' Dog Food so that their children get the vitamins and nutrients they need to make it to 30.
You can learn a lot from Dad. A Dukes woman said he taught her how to take care of herself.
My father was a firefighter, and he taught me you have to fight fire with fire. That's why when I caught my ex-boyfriend cheating, I doused him and that bitch in kerosene and cooked their asses.
In genetic modification news, Eugenics Incorporated, the designer baby specialists, will showcase some of their super kids at a baby bazaar in Liberty City's Grand Northumbrian Hotel next month. Visitors will be able to watch 5-year-old Francisco reassemble a motor engine or listen to 6-year-old Lily's simultaneous interpretation in 12 languages. Eugenics Incorporated promotes itself as a one-stop shop for tailor-made tots, allowing customers to design their perfect baby by pre-selecting characteristics like IQ, sexual orientation, double D breasts, or a 10-inch hammer from a glossy catalog. Great stuff. Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Minorities have always had it tough in this country, and a new group of minorities is finding itself the subject of discrimination.
As America becomes fatter, slim people are starting to suffer. With over 2/3 of the American population now overweight, the slender demographic is feeling increasingly marginalized for their insistence on portion control. Many companies have now started hiring a token slim person as a demonstration of their cultural diversity. Eric House, Weazel News.
We've had the phone that vibrates. Now it's time for the vibrator that's a phone. Fruit's new iRocket is the cell phone for women that pushes all the right buttons. The iRocket blends cutting-edge frictionless technology with Fruit's signature simplistic clean design. Although it won't stay clean for long, this rocket is wiped down clean. A discreet sexual aid, the iRocket comes with an extra powerful battery so it won't switch off before you get off. The iRocket is scheduled to hit stores for Christmas. This is Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Meth, s'il vous plaît?
Following huge success in the United States, crystal meth producers are looking to get a stronger foothold in Europe over the next 2 to 5 years.
It's the perfect time to expand into Europe. Heroin's on the decline. The ecstasy bubbles burst. And coke's boring. Meth is the #1 drug in America for a reason. The Europeans will love it. They already stay up all night listening to shitty music and fucking.
Tweaked on meth, I'm Eric House, Weazel News.
A Los Santos hunger strike has entered its 8th year as rail-thin socialites and Vinewood elite waste away in an attempt to be the skinniest city in America. Experts say it's the rigorous schedule of appearances, talk shows, and snorting rails of blow that has many celebrities forgetting to eat or using the old two-finger salute to bring up that steak tartare. Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Weazel News, where the double homicide of the day is always brought to you by The Horn. Bring out the beast.
A drug scandal in the finance industry today.
The entire trading desk of top investment bank Schlumberger and Sachs tested positive in random drug tests last week. Experts say that the stockbrokers and hedge funders are especially prone to addiction as they are soulless, boring dorks who should get out more. In the Exchange District, Mike Whiteley, Weazel News.
In tech news, at first glance you would think residents of Liberty City are praying, but what they're really praying to is the bittersweet email device. The handheld device that delivers emails instantly recently topped 30 million units sold as America heads into a future of never being away from work and never paying attention to their spouses. Some wives report that bittersweet users are constantly sending email, even during cunnilingus. Callista Brown, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
A beer shocker. According to research carried out by Pride Brew, men who drink light beer are 10 times more likely to pussy out of a fight. The study, which covered 100 barroom brawls across America, concludes that the vast majority of light beer drinkers are bi-curious metrosexuals who run at the faintest hint of trouble. Drinking light beer is tantamount to castrating yourself, said Pride Brew's director of PR, especially if you put a piece of lime in it. Dude and like may be endangered words. At a conference held in Stockholm last week to discuss age-appropriate use of American English, linguists were divided over the word dude. Some believe that it should be phased out by the late 20s, but others feel that there is room for acceptable use into the early 30s. Like was, on the other hand, seen acceptable in men only up to the age of 25, but women could carry it off if they kept their figure up to the age of 37. For now, the debate on the age at which you should stop saying dude, like, homie, or bitching rages on. This is Weazel News, homie.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
Residents of Los Santos are going bananas after a simian slipped past security and onto the streets yesterday. The 450-pound gorilla killed 4 people and has the city in fear. A mayor's office spokesperson held a press conference suggesting that the blame lay at the door of the company that published the popular 80s video game series Space Monkey. He called them monkey escape simulators and said they've been influencing apes for years.
The stomach pumps were out in force this week at Europe's inaugural binge drinking championships held in Milan. The UK and Northern Ireland teams swept the board, winning 6 out of 9 categories, including pregnant teenager and men in their 30s who should know better. Finland, Spain, Denmark, and Poland also fared well in the competition, and the French squad was tipped as the one to watch for next year after some impressive displays of projectile vomiting. Italy's coach was sacked following a pitifully lightweight performance and reports of not a single incident of unprotected sex. I'm Brian Wilkinson, Weazel News.
This is Weazel News. Weazel News.
A worrying story for families.
Concerned parents watchdog group Citizens United Negating Technology for Life and People's Safety has blacklisted didgeridoo website ILoveToBlow.com, saying that playing the didgeridoo turns some teens gay and gives girls unhealthy expectations of size. Circular breathing has also been a fad among college students who train to be able to do bong hits while eating pizza. Outside Pizza Stack, I'm Eric House, Weazel News.
Animal rights activists have thrown red paint over the famous British artists Simon and Nigel as they left a Suffolk nightclub in Liberty City early this morning. The animal rights group, which made headlines last year for blowing up a laboratory that was on the brink of finding the cure for cancer, believes that the artist's work is demeaning to the ape community as a whole. The butch female activists escaped the scene on foot, but were picked up by police 2 blocks away where they had collapsed from lack of protein. Security has been heightened ahead of next week's furry convention. This is Weazel News, brought to you by VIPLuxuryRingtones.com.
This is Weazel News.